I've had the new Pebble Time 2 for almost a week, and I'm really enjoying it. I made this video to share some additional information so you can decide if it's the kind of watch you'd like to order, and so you'll know what to expect if you're waiting on your pre-order. First off, the onboarding experience. Before your watch arrives, you can download the app to your smartphone, peruse some apps and watch faces you'd like to load, and get ready. When your watch arrives, simply click Add Device. It'll download a software update in a minute or two and then load it onto your watch. Once it restarts, you're ready to go. It's a really easy process. In terms of the software, Pebble is great. Pebble OS is pretty much what I remember from the Pebble Time Steel, which is to say, it's really easy to use. Navigating notifications is easy, controlling your music playback is easy. It's just a breeze. I love it. The iOS app, which I've been using on my phone, is also quite nice. You can find new apps or watch faces, and it's generally easy to use. Although there are a couple of settings that I wasn't quite sure what they meant. For example, what is a timeline quick view? I don't know. I wish there was a way to tap on a setting and find out a little bit more about what it means. Perhaps someone will add that feature to the app in the future. Okay, now onto the hardware. I really like the way the new Pebble Time 2 looks and feels. The seams are all uniform, it has really high build quality, and the metal has a nice matte black finish that looks like it's not so shiny that it's going to get scratched really easily. It also feels really good, both on your wrist and in your hand. It's not so lightweight as to feel insubstantial. At the same time, it isn't as heavy as an Apple Watch Ultra or a Garmin. They can feel a little bit too heavy on your wrist, especially when you're out jogging or exercising. The buttons on the Pebble Time 2 are nice and clicky, although they're not quite as large as the buttons on the Pebble Time Steel. Vibrations on the new Pebble are firm enough to be felt, although I would note that the nudge setting, which seems to be the default for notifications, is a little bit too brief for my liking. It's firm enough, but it's so quick you can miss it if you're not paying attention. I switched my notifications to standard low, which seems to be fine for me. There's also a standard high, which is presumably even more emphatic. I noticed that the backlight on the Pebble Time 2 seems a little bit bluer than the backlight on the Pebble Time Steel. At least that's my recollection, and a few other people have talked about it on Reddit. Fortunately, the backlight is RGB, which means that it should be possible to update this in a software update. And hypothetically, it should be possible to make it so that the backlight actually has a different hue from the morning to the evening. So it could be bluer in the morning, and then as it gets closer to evening, it turns a bit redder. Okay, on to battery life. When I got my Pebble, it was at 66%, and it charged up to 100% in about 30 minutes. That means that a full charge probably takes around an hour. That's great, especially for a watch that you don't have to charge all that often. Now for the bad news. It's been 5 days, and my Pebble's at 45%, which is not so good. That means I'm definitely not going to make it to 3 or 4 weeks, and I might not even make it to 2. That said, I've been using my watch a lot in the last 5 days. I downloaded a bunch of software updates, apps, watch faces, and I'm using the watch much more than I normally would. This means that in a regular 5-day period, I probably wouldn't go through 55% of the battery life. Also, I understand the team is working to optimize battery life right now, and given how they've knocked things out of the park on the hardware front, I remain pretty confident that they're going to be able to get the battery life up to where they claimed originally, about 4 weeks. Even though the Pebble is not a fitness watch, it still has a heart rate sensor and step tracking, so I tested them out to see how accurate they are. I went out for walks, runs, and jogs with a Pebble on one wrist, a Garmin on the other, and an iPhone running Runkeeper in my pocket. Here's how it worked out. At the beginning, there were some disparities between the three devices, but by the end of an hour-long walk or a half-hour run, everything was pretty well coalesced. There weren't big differences between the Pebble, the Garmin, and Runkeeper on my phone. That said, there were a few times where the Pebble clocked me at either 20 beats per minute higher or 20 beats per minute lower in terms of heart rate, and I'm pretty sure the Garmin was accurate and it was the Pebble that was off. I would recommend tightening the strap on your wrist a little bit more than you normally would, because this seemed to fix the problem of having the heart rate too low. I don't know why the heart rate was too high on the one occasion that it was, but it only lasted for 15 or 20 seconds, so it's not a big concern for me. At the end of the day, the Pebble is not a fitness watch, and if you're training for a marathon, it's probably not the right watch for you. On the other hand, if you're like most people and you just want to track some steps or see how far you went on a hike, it seems like it's pretty good for that purpose. The Pebble did crash once on me, which is not great. What happened was the screen froze and the buttons were non-responsive. It was easy to restart it. I just had to hold down the top two buttons. Most importantly, it wasn't a crash that was catastrophic because the notifications continued to come through. This is important because when I had a Pebble Time Steel, sometimes it would crash in the middle of the night, and then my alarm wouldn't go off the next morning because it was still crashed. In this case, I don't think it was a complete crash. I think it was more like a freeze, where the notifications were flowing through, it was able to vibrate, and so I don't think if this had happened in the middle of the night, my alarms wouldn't have gone off the next morning. So I view that as a good thing. I would also note that right before I started recording this, Pebble pushed out an update, and it mentioned that they've fixed some crashes, so hopefully this will be a non-issue by the time you watch this video. There were some changes I made to the default settings, and I wanted to share them in case they're useful for you. First, I didn't think the backlight stayed on long enough by default, so I increased that a little bit. Second, I was a little bit surprised that when I was doing the onboarding, it didn't ask if I wanted to share health data from my Pebble to Apple Health. I had to go in and find this in the settings and turn it on, which wasn't that big a deal, but it seems like something that should be part of the onboarding process by default. I use my Pebble to control music playback a lot, and I really like this new feature that allows you to turn off the progress bar during audio playback. This is useful because it means that the screen doesn't have to refresh once every second, but instead only once every minute, which should help with battery life. The last change I made is to the app itself. I have to be honest, I don't love the reddish color of the new Pebble app. On my home screen, I don't have anything that's red other than notifications. So what I did is I hid the app on a different screen and then made a shortcut that I put on my home screen, and I gave the shortcut a gray icon with a little watch logo on it. Lastly, a couple of things that I learned. When you're doing music playback, you can actually access the second level menu by simply holding down on either the top button or the bottom button. You don't have to press the ... to access more in the middle and then press up or down. You can just hold up to increase the volume or hold down to decrease the volume. You can also hold the middle button to play or pause, which is neat. There is one feature that I miss about my Garmin, which is that when you hold down a button to launch an app, on the Garmin, I only use the music playback app, it vibrates briefly after the app is launched so that you know you can then use the other buttons to control the playback. I wish Pebble would copy this feature because there were a number of times where I didn't realize that my watch wasn't on the home screen, which is the only screen from which you can hold down a button and launch an app. So I didn't realize that the music playback controls, for example, hadn't launched, and I started pressing buttons trying to control the music playback, but it didn't work. I had to press home and then hold down the button again, and it would be nice if there was just that little bit of haptic feedback. Overall, I'm really happy with my new Pebble. I like how it looks and feels, I like the way it works, and I'm really happy to have a Pebble on my wrist again after so many years. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll either address them there or in a future video. I'm only planning on making one more video that'll show how the new Pebble Time 2 looks with metal watch bands. Hopefully one of them will be a great fit.